I'm Sheila Rule, moderator of the In Our Name conference. On a beautiful August weekend, an array of advocates, professionals, and the general public came together to discuss the state of our criminal justice system. What you're about to experience is a compelling mix of thoughts, ideas, and stories that will help us all to reframe our thinking about crime and violence in America so that we can move forward toward a just and fair system for all. Everybody, we will now begin our next session. We'll be treated to poetry by Cara Benson and Arthur Logan. Arthur prefers no introduction, so we will move on to Cara. Cara is the author of the forthcoming Funny, Considering How Heated It Was. She has received a New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship in Poetry, and she's the chair of the Penn Prison Writing Committee. She's been teaching poetry and poetics at Mount McGregor since 2005. Cara.
Oh, can we have the thing? I want the thing, the stand. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, and I know I have to get right to. Okay, does that work? That's good? Hi everybody, I'm glad to be here. I see familiar faces, new faces. I know Gordon Boyd was involved, certainly, and as he's involved in many things that happen in the area that have to do with volunteer efforts and supporting true rehabilitation on the inside, and David Karp and Lois Pino. But really, I need to acknowledge Frank Zarro for just doing what appears to be an incredible job. And I'm not surprised. I'm just not surprised, right? Like, I knew Frank on the inside and what he was capable of. It was like only a matter of time that things would start to take off for him. So it's an honor to be here. So Sean Dalpiaz and Mel Williams were going to also come and read some poetry from the class, and you know, herding poets is like herding cats, and they couldn't quite get here. So I'm going to read a little bit of prose that I've written about the class, some pieces that are in actually a forthcoming book coming out from SUNY Press, and I'm going to read some poetry from the class, and then Arthur's going to read some of his poetry. And that's how it's going to go. Here's how it goes down. It's much like any other room where students sit at desks and there is a teacher. These students know I have a high tolerance for chaos, so poems on papers might literally fly around the room in the wind of an opened window, or often enough, overtalk among them takes over. Other times I stride right in the room, focused on modernism and automation or black arts in the military-industrial banking complex, and don't stop talking for 25 minutes when it's time to hear their thoughts and poems from during the week. Then we are all ears. Take notes on each other and feed them back. Much like any other room where students sit at desks and there's a teacher, we do have an outline of study, or do now. For years we rolled with it. I got my hands and head around that morning. There is a Xerox machine I can use in the superintendent's assistant office, and I take full advantage of the state budget. You know, for like, I get $1 a week? Just saying. Like any other room where students sit at desks and there's a teacher, I bring in poems and essays on poetics and historical context and sometimes seemingly unrelated material that we connect through a constellation of dots back to the poems. We curse the government. We write the revolution will not be a status update. Yes, they know about Facebook. And create our own cosmologies. Rewrite creation mythologies. Look up all sorts of words in the dictionary. I bring in an unabridged whomper every week. Up the hill. Much like any other room where students sit at desk and there's a teacher, I don't know if I'm not also the man in some subtle way, that the best I can hope for is modeling some sort of reverent irreverence for syntax and form and the lineage of any particular trope. I mean, you gotta know when you say rose in a poem that it comes with all sorts of baggage, right? I tell them that I found out that publishing didn't save me or anyone, but that writing might, and that there is something bigger than I am, than them, that we take part in, and that is language, and that is the writing, and that is society's currency. And when we get our fingers and teeth on it, we, like Kathy Acker says, whenever we engage in discourse, we are using given meanings and values, changing them and giving them back, that we are changing something. And much like any other room where students sit at desks and there's a teacher, maybe that writing never leaves the room. Maybe it changes nothing outside that room. Maybe the only thing that that class changes outside that room is me. I can't speak for them. But I'm gonna. So this is a piece that I wrote for the Poetry Society. Poetry Society of America is doing a series this year on politics and poetry, it being an election year, so it was a very timely thing they thought to do. So I wrote about the prison class. Poetry and politics in prison. This is a quote from another writer, Joshua Clover. It isn't thought that totalizes, capital totalizes, power totalizes, and one has to have ways of describing that. If at the exact moment that the world is being totalized, because that is what the process of globalization and financialization is, the totalizing of the world along the axes of space and time by capital, the issue of whether you or I want to totalize, it doesn't even matter. There's this thing out there that totalizes, and we have to have the language to describe it, end quote. One of my many and varied gigs as a poet is teaching a weekly poetry class in a New York State prison, which is in itself, I think, a political thing that poets don't get paid to actually write. I mean, I think that's a comment on our society. I started the project in 2005 as the teaching practicum for my master's degree and had intended to do just the required time to graduate, 3 months. 2 months in, I crossed paths with the late poet and prison educator activist Janine Pami Vega at a reading and told her about the class, that we were reading everyone from Lu Chi to Amiri Baraka and writing poems in response. She was eager to see me continue, so she offered some financial support and said she would come as a visiting writer. Saying no to her wasn't really an option. Besides, if she could do it, go in week after week, year after year, she had been going inside since the 70s, up until her death. Which was 2 years ago. If she could do it week after week, year after year, who was I to quit? Janine was struggling by then with many physical ailments, so for her first and what proved to be her only visit, I drove down to Woodstock to pick her up and ride her back the 2 hours to the prison. We arranged a wheelchair on site, and after a bit of finagling up too many stairs, were able to get her to the classroom. There had to be 20, maybe more guys waiting. First thing, she gets her marimbas out on the desk and says, "Nothing wrong with roses, gentlemen, but if that's what you're writing about, you might as well have your head up your ass." It's true. I want to be fancier than this, to be done with bifurcation. Either you're writing politically or not. But I don't want to be fiddling while the planet is burning. Brenda Hillman has said that it's the poet's job not to sing normal, comforting ditties while eco-devastation is underway. Something about using a lyre with broken strings. And I would add that we ought not to be singing lullabies while the U.S. is incarcerating its primarily of color citizens at the largest per capita rate in the world. Shelley and Jam, prison industrial complex, rhyme with prisoners as profit, make a lovely image glint in the dew on the razor wire. Oh, death row, oh, Jim Crow. I do not mean to deny anyone the right to write about anything, or from anything, or about anything, let alone flowers or beauty or death as an existential experience, if not its political use as an adjudicated punishment, or to situate the aesthetic, high-low blend of T.S. Lady Elliot Gaga, into the intricacies of exquisite despair and rising like a, fill in the simile, from the, fill in the metaphor, to a righteous roar. In fact, I don't rule out anything in the prison class. No raw, no cooked, no conceptualized or otherwise or anywhere, and especially not there. Why wouldn't we recopy the New York Times as poetry, write about the moon, sleep with the dictionary? I'm not going to be categorically against anything in a classroom of incarcerated students students whose expression is already forced closed. So, after all this, a concept in the form of another story. One of our recent endeavors was an extended and loose version of the Cento, which is a poem comprised entirely of lines from other poems. About a month or so after Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders took to the Senate floor in 2010 to filibuster, though it was not technically a filibuster, the vote to extend the Bush-era tax cuts for the wealthy, I started bringing in sections of the speech for us to make poems with. We operated on the text through sapphic meter and erasures and haiku and epistolary and rant chants and flip the script, and all of these were opportunities for form to reveal some things about the way that forms reveal some things about the way language works at the same time that we were bleeding our hearts out. Here's one of the poems the class collaborated on. Let me be clear. Something Bernie always said. Did anybody watch that filibuster? Anybody see that? I was like crying. I was sitting in my boxer shorts on my computer. I couldn't leave my home for 8 hours. I was like, go, Bernie, go. Someone's speaking for us. Here's one of the poems. Let me be clear. Shut down, moron, America. Republican philosophy functionally obsolete. This is a conservative issue. We are moving in reverse. Paid in Bangladesh. Not to worry, millionaires. Tax breaks. Chambers of Commerce, Chambers of Congress, same thing. Inflation dropped education. People are wasting, rotting product, infrastructure. It is just not good enough. Whatever you think of the poem or its politics, it does confront syntax, enacts an intentionally crippled rhythm, close enough to a sonnet to know it, uses a moment of parallelism, all this from the Senate floor through the pens and dry erase markers and mouths of a dozen medium security prisoners, some lifers. Oh, context. This poem is also taken out of the context of the rest of the poems. In a chapbook of them that's coming out actually in about a month, Let Me Be Clear plays against and with selections from a variety of approaches to the language. In the class, the students loved, then hated, then tolerated, then finished the project. We spoke in the room about expression and voice as terms that might still count. On the count! We spoke in the room about how some of them don't feel like they could say what they wanted or how when forced to speak through Bernie's words. Of course, there's the possibility of liberation within constraint. Of course, we're speaking through someone else's words all the time. Though a prison isn't a hotbed for neologisms, nowhere is. They're constantly like, I'm just like really uncool and they're constantly telling me what they're saying. Like, what are those words? Still, time is an issue. There's only so much time. No, it's not a captive audience. No, they don't have nothing but time on their hands, and yet everything is about time. Movement between buildings can only happen at certain times. Counting days for some, others, the lifers, are trying to take advantage of any and every program that comes inside and to also make their own. Or when there's an overabundance of it, time becomes entropic. The class is 1.5 hours per week, Mondays. So as any theoretically unclaimed moments they could allot to the writing between classes aren't ever guaranteed, not to mention that any one of them not might, but will be gone at any moment, transferred, released, sent to the hole, injured. I never know if all they have to give to the conversation is that particular moment. And as I witnessed this 90-minute segment of their daily experience carved out within repeated doses of deflation, if one of them says that he is struggling to find his voice through those words from the floor, I wince a little. I don't want to be the oppressor, too. And yet, this is a perfect situation to tackle structural concerns and their encompassing failures. Most of them said they could hear the differences. Even though they were using the same words, they could still see their own quirks and tics and points and such appear. And then we talked about language as a social construction, how some theories have it that words formed between primates while grooming or gossiping. But no matter the unprovable origin, language occurs in, and most likely as a result of, relation. We spoke of how we too are socially constructed. In prison, this constructivism is a colonizing force. These students are now forever frozen in actions committed however long ago it was by such terms as convict, felon, inmate, and maybe someday ex-con. And so we add poet. Of course, when writing political poems, there's always the risk of creating agitprop, art that is solely intended to inculcate polemic reactions. It is too easy to ooze too much anger, to reduce the poem to a pointing finger, which, while especially satisfying some days, isn't what this class is ultimately after. There's also the risk of expecting something to happen. We know poems aren't policy, though they may influence advocacy. most often or likely in that they provide a place and process for the thinking or feeling through of politics for the poets themselves, who might then also be advocates, agitators, create conferences. I personally don't want to burden poems with expectations. I can ask something of the poet and the reader, though. I can ask that we pay attention, which includes the circumstances of the poem, which includes politics. The context is not solely political, but it isn't solely apolitical either. And in prison, it's more so. If politics is viewed in Aristotelian terms as efforts toward the human good, I believe that creating space and time in prison, a city-state in itself, for the incarcerated to examine, press against, relinquish, and enact the fetters and buttresses of language is, in itself, a political act. This class fosters the ability and provides, week after week, year after year, an opportunity to articulate the totalizing situation of which Clover writes from deep within the grip of that very structure. From that inside, I offer you here, outside, some of the Bernie Sanders project of which I spoke. Oh, it's coming, but thank you. So this is the intro and then some of their poems. Should never deny applause. Why did I do that? Go ahead, applause. Okay, this is my intro to the project, and then some of their poems. Most of the 10 men who showed voluntarily to the poetry class I teach at McGregor Correctional Facility had heard a Bernie's speech before I began Xeroxing for weekly handout 20-page chunks of it at a time. If they had not specifically got word of this particular filibuster attempting to reverse the impending agreement to extend tax breaks for the wealthy, while Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, public education, public health care, clean energy, and living wage jobs for all continue to be under increasing and insidious and ubiquitous attack in the halls and back rooms of the nation's paid and paying players, they were and are, well, brutally and intimately familiar with the harsh reality of lived experience in such a violently discriminatory society, and they know they are. And while there are myriad charges to be levied against the prison industrial complex regarding race, class, sexual orientation, human rights abuses, and corporate profiteering through the systematic privatization of more and more of these neo-plantation facilities, the focus of this project is on a specific aspect of the money. We are, as Senator Sanders is, keenly interested in the connection between the lack of investing in social services and public infrastructure and the great allowing of funds to be retained by and funneled to the uber wealthy. Senator Sanders was very clear. For 8+ hours, he spoke from the Senate floor on December 10, 2010, to repeatedly and passionately make the case that corporate America is a thugocracy and that buying or consuming on any level, the too big to fail, or the trickle-down economics, or the wealthy people create jobs, or the most injurious co-optation of the class warfare rhetoric will only pull the tar out from under the feet of those who are already falling to their knees in despair all the quicker. So if, as one of the poems in this page's references, opinion rules the world, and Senator Sanders was exhausting himself in an effort to uncover the true ideology shaping the votes, we too wanted to enter this arena of influence, if only through the words spoken from the floor, if not to be allowed access to speak from the floor ourselves. What follows is a collection of poems that were created through mostly these poems are created through the words from the Bernie Sanders text, and I just want to read the names of the guys who are in the project. D. Anderson, Jerry Andrews, R.C. Brown, Jarreau Carter, Daniel Felder, Dempsey Hawkins, J.J. Davies, Ismael Melendez, Danny Nelson, and Eric Perez. Props go out to them. Oh, no, the poems are coming. Oh, I forgot. I, American, pretty, am homeless. We need a bailout. Those who have nothing. I still can't buy foods that my family life needs. The cuts for my job leaves a mile of 8 hurting of cold in their homes while our leaders in Congress strike rich people deals not for those who have nothing. So money, like greed, changes nothing of debt. There is another word, loopholes, determining the law of how billions in wealth that our country is losing. If corporate is now government, then democracy is broken. Basted. Communications, electronics, America awash in gadgets like seashore driftwood, television king of the household, Homes with multiple sets featuring three-dimensional capabilities so real make you think that peacock you grew up watching has suddenly jumped out the screen smack dab in your living room, multicolored feathers and all. Birds strutting about like lord and master, pontificating and philosophizing on everything under the sun and behind the moon, simply hell-bent on spreading the gospel, and damned if you or anyone else don't care to listen, because the bird got more to say than the Sunday morning preachers. And talk he does on into your kitchen, where C-SPAN is broadcasting the impassioned speech of a Vermont senator determined to clip the bird's wings. Right now, I am working on an issue which deals with the merger of Comcast and NBC. I think it is a bad idea. Comcast is the largest provider of cable services in America, huge role in the internet, and NBC is one of the largest media conglomerates in America. What they are trying to do right now is to merge these two huge companies. The senator's words spill from the screen, profuse as airborne paratroopers intent on restoring order to a damaged state, while the bird babbles on and looks round for something to swallow and grow as it swaggers out the door to go tell it on the mountain where its message and global outreach will soar above the representative flags of the United Nations fluttering in democratic blue skies, under which the bird begins to shout, holler, and shake its ass, for it's been in the communications business long enough to know that more so than money, opinion rules the world. Yeah, that was MC Hawkins. Give it up. Simple truth. My father never graduated from high school. The grandchildren are getting older, and mothers understand that people die, that they get hooked on drugs or whatever. The insane phone calls and emails supported. Every Friday afternoon, a few words about our lives become like pipes laid in Rutland, Vermont, which is still being used. But the truth is, it gets harder and harder to read about outside. Dear Bernie, I am sorry that this country remains in its home when the goal is to expand the economy, not corporate welfare. I have written to my religion, and the investigation is still secret. Sometimes I feel like 2/3 of the American people whose kneecaps are functionally obsolete. When I try to stand, I end up kneeling before 2.4% of the nation's GDP. Some of these taxes are like a blur in a subway. It seems to move faster and faster the closer I get to China, and I never left New York. Respectfully, a concerned citizen. A constitution. We are the people of the United States. We built America. Politicians put words in our mouth in which we cannot feed. Our hunger is your sickness. One day, our hardship will transcend the policy of politics. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, believe in America. We have families. In your own words, what is going on in your family? Do big banks attack like politicians, feasting the underclass voters' cuisine? Do they deliberately cut you? We, the people, establish justice to ensure domestic tranquility. This business model is fraudulent. It's fraudulent because we live near corrupt corporate rivers of small print that can raise interest rates at any time, and gas prices are due tomorrow with a coffee and newspaper. We, the people, provide for common defense by fighting for America. Employers cut our benefits. We work 50 hours to go in debt 60 hours. There's not enough dented cans to go around. Millions of Americans are boiling water on the stove and pouring it into a tub. They have no windows, and gas prices are due tomorrow with a coffee and newspaper. We, the people, promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves by working in America. Our pride does not provide health insurance in this global economy. We have to choose between baby food, education, and heating fuel below zero. We tighten our belts to repair billions, and gas prices are due tomorrow with a coffee and newspaper. We, the people, hear America. Our posterity listens in on Wall Street. We have questions as to the privacy of politics. We will always have questions about institutional gangsters wanting to expand and create an economy right somewhere in the middle of the GDP of our country. We, the people, ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America because we are America. We are tired. We will make public the privacy of our pain. I'm just going to read one last one from Coda Brown that is his own thing. It's not the Bernie Sanders project. It's called The Age of Aquarius. And he wrote this after I brought in Howl by Allen Ginsberg, and they were, rightfully knocked out. And when Coda gets his teeth into something, he just doesn't stop. Right now, we're on to, he won't let me go. He just wants Federico Garcia Lorca. Did you bring the Lorca? Cara, did you bring you got the Lorca this week? Where's the Lorca? My God, give me the Lorca. Poetry is a currency. The Age of Aquarius, for Allen Ginsberg. I remember awakening each day, a soul rooted with one eye open to the world, and seeing the infinite rivers of wisdom flowing with the swirling currents of change. These snapshot moments bound in deep blue memories was the age of Aquarius. When women burned braziers on the steps of bureaucracy and Roe v. Wade argued the right to life behind pink podiums of birth control. When Brown got an education in a long, hot summer, as Star Trek gave me my first kiss and all I ever wanted was R-E-S-P-C-T. When my brother and your sister dropped tabs and experienced ecstasy and the CIA implemented mission mind control to the sound of Black Panthers clawing at the walls of the great white status quo in the supernatural darkness of back rooms and briefcases. When primary colors were the only colors for Grateful Dead and funkadelic tie-dyes, as if to say, my mind is my own to expand, to shrink, to burn out, or just fade away, and the word liberal was used to lubricate the constipation of right-wing conservatives while freaks streaked and babies went boom. How may I direct my vigilance in the net of night with flashlights enforcing rights, with new chains weighing down old hatred at the bottom of the Tallahassee? And when someone asked, what can I do for my country? The British invaded and Motown asked, what's going on? When ambassadors of pain whispered to larceny with visions of steel and mothers with eyes flowing liquid sadness traced their steps to where loved ones once stood among the smoking ashes of avarice contemplating hope, life, and the stardom of Jesus Christ. When common language paid tribute to the insidious disease of jealousy and envy as the cries of those who suffered were drowned in the harrowing pitch of shiny dollars of gold, the jingle and jangle of a tyrant's need for flesh undaunted. When afros and hippie beads meant free love and not the criminal element on the end of a pointing finger, like you, like me, like fashion freaks of free speech, like Korea, like Vietnam, like an execution and the persecution of a dream on mountaintops, of icy blue caps, of snow-white fertility. When fulfilling noble promises of liberty and justice for all were spoken in words that sounded a lot like billy clubs and tear gas and uniforms of state as the right to vote became a suicide solution and a drifter took a shot at being king and Jimmy chopped down mountains with the edge of his hand. When sing-song voices carried this irony on the feet of the dead like a new heart plucked by the hands of an ancient child, sorrowful and slow in satirical agony, when all-night street fights brought down pain. When podiums of gold and bronze were traded for 2 black gloves and life in a star-spangled banner, and a hunter wrote freelance because the age of Aquarius was born to be wild. When blood, sweat, and tears bent knee on the sacred steps of Kent and looked up into the vulgar eyes of popular trees, bearing strange fruit in the abbreviated states of NC, SC, GA, KY, ALA, Miss, TXLA, FLA, and TN, all the way to the Rockefeller Laws of New York State, where jazz and blues played the background music for the Jim Crow show, and before you leave the house, your mother tells you not to forget that your face is black. That was R.C. Brown. And now Arthur.
Hello. Thank you for giving voice to those who are incarcerated. Confinement. Most experiences like this leave indelible impressions. Confinement. Here I stand, lowly, belittled, and oppressed. Man. Confinement. I am in here who I am out there. Anywhere, everywhere, sojourner, even in the face of truth. They deny me for their selfish nature, but I rise to the level like blood pressure. I said I rise to the level like blood pressure, confinement. Here, only prepared ears hear, so I appear, and I disappear, only to be seen when I want to be. I appear, then I disappear, only to be serene, just like an angel came to me in a dream and said, look beyond images, things become the spoils of men. Those impious feet of starved men, deliver them from oppression. Provide hope for a national liberation. Oppressed, liberating the oppressed. Smells like Moses is on my breath. Still, my view is somewhat lofty, and my unruly apprehensions are full of contradictions, but I say to them, it's in the way of irony that heroes ascend to glory. I add, I'm not stubborn, I'm obstinate. Hear me out. The difference is in an intellectual intent, a motivation driven by an internal conflict. So, I'm off to the next. Oh. That I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest, and be at rest, and be at rest, and be at rest. There was a time I was struggling while my peers were so elated. It was around the time President Barack Obama got inaugurated. Looking out the window, what do I see? I see reflections of the status quo, metaphysical winds rolling against the grain. Nights like this, I wish it would rain. Disenfranchised Americans, we dream, not for today. If President Barack Obama epitomizes the American dream, we still dream, not for today. I too sing America. Langston Hughes would say, if not for you, we would all be blue. Examining the tenets of a dream, the king once seen, crossing socioeconomic lines. Most say we are still far behind. The case of our time is this illusion. Most eyes are closed like birds flying through windows. I interrupt this program to bring you a special public service announcement. No more than a threatening handfuls of quarters reflect this government scandal. American dream has been a failure. That is, only a few can realize it in its fullest sense. We must move beyond images because we've paid an exorbitant price while being deprived the knowledge and contributions made to American life, like 40 acres and a mule. Tools. I see a benign picture. The dangling carrot is her hope. My will makes hope my foe. I will hope no more. My will makes hope my foe. I will hope no more. My will makes hope my foe. I will hope no more. Still in the 21st century, gangster images keep some whites in the dark. Historically, though, here are the intricacies of race relations. In opposition to whiteness, blackness is thus defined. The literary symbol refines its culturalization. Stripped consciousness moves blackness in mind to go back in time. There's no such word or lace more kind. Now let's rewind. In opposition to whiteness, blackness is thus defined. The literary symbol refines its culturalization. Stripped consciousness moves blackness in mind as we go back in time. There is no such word that relates to mankind. We can't be black. The color of my core. Some may see blue. Others may see red, you know. But I implore those of the racist mind to see that we are purple people, neither red nor blue. Looking out the window, what do I see? I see reflections of the status quo, metaphysical winds blowing against the grain. Nights like this, I wish it would rain. Disenfranchised Americans, we still dream, not for today. I almost forgot to introduce myself. Sometimes, you know, I have poor etiquette, and I apologize for that, but hi, I'm jobless, I'm homeless, I'm broke, I'm on parole. I'm jobless, I'm homeless, I'm broke, I'm on parole. I'm jobless, I'm homeless, I'm broke, I'm on parole. I'm jobless, I'm homeless, I'm broke, I'm on parole. But those who are close to me call me Art. Have a good night. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much. And to all those who could not be with us, please thank them for us. Okay, back to the Great Hall for the last session of the day. You don't want to miss it.